Derick Hall is the latest addition to the group of edge rushers in Seattle. Plus, there is a QB out there possibly that should the Seahawks trade for. That and more coming up on Locked On Seahawks.
You are Locked On Seahawks, your daily Seattle Seahawks podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, 12s. This is your host for the day, Nick Lee. Best wishes to Corbin and his wife Natalia on their belated, well-deserved honeymoon to Hawaii. The pictures are making me extremely jealous. Never been. Dallas and I are going to hold down the fort today on this Blue Friday, Cinco de Mayo. Celebrate responsibly. Of course, enjoy yourselves here on this Cinco de Mayo and this Friday here. And, well, in the words of Donny Osmond from Mulan, let's get down to business. Dallas, now for your lead story here on the opening drive of the Locked On Seahawks. The Seahawks didn't select a quarterback during the 2023 NFL Draft. They appear to be fully rolling with Geno Smith for 2023 and perhaps beyond. But is there a certain quarterback who saw his team draft his replacement last week that could be available for trade? And I'm talking about Malik Willis, the backup quarterback for the Titans. And first of all, before you break the pitchforks out and point them directly at me, because I've seen some comments out there already, before anyone accuses me of being the main stirrer of the pot, let me cite my sources first. First, there was a tweet out there from NFL Rumors. I think it's at NFL Rooms. Say what you want. They've gotten some things right. They got almost 225,000 followers, so it's not like some troll account. They said that the Seahawks were named the best fit for a trade for Malik Willis, and there was an article from Draft Network who listed the Seahawks as one of the 3 best trade options for Malik Willis. Now, the Titans haven't necessarily said we're open for business. We're open for trades for Malik Willis here. Best offer. Here we go. But the first question should be, Dallas, should the Seahawks investigate this and perhaps ponder a trade?
I don't think that the Seahawks should be investigating, but I don't think they should be seriously looking for this. Their quarterback room is set. You set Drew Lock, and he got an exponential amount of money for a backup. And especially, there was a little bit of a surprise earlier in the offseason. Maybe we thought that the Seahawks would draft a late-round quarterback, but they chose not to, and they stuck with Drew Lock as the backup. Malik Willis as a potential trade option is intriguing. And as your sources said, if you're speaking from the perspective of Malik Willis, the Seahawks are one of the best trade destinations for him. But for the Seahawks perspective, I don't really feel that Malik Willis is really a fit, being that he's really raw. And this is not a case of like a guy like Anthony Richardson, where there was tools to kind of tinker from, and you just had to kind of maybe adjust a little bit, and he could be a processing NFL quarterback. At Liberty, Malik Willis did not do much NFL concepts. Looking at his pass chart, we thought, Seahawk fans, Russell Wilson's pass chart with refusing to throw over the middle was really egregious. Malik Willis at Liberty did not throw over the middle at all. And that's being that it's a struggle in the NFL, and it has been for him. He has 276 passing yards in 8 games with a 50% completion rate. And it is tough that he's only gotten 1 year as a shot, but at the end of the day, as a quarterback, the timetables are very short, and you have to provide in that limited opportunity, and he didn't.
Yeah, he did get kind of thrown into the fire there in Tennessee a little bit. So look, I'm not going to try to, shock jock anybody. If the Seahawks weren't interested in him in last year's draft, why would they be now? Is my kind of play, my take to this. The 50% completion percentage and his 3 starts, 8 total games with the Titans, 4.5 yards per attempt when the league average is 7. Ouch. 42.8 passer rating, like you mentioned. Initially, we saw mocks last year that he was going to be, first round pick, maybe even top 10. Some people had him mock into the Seahawks. And we were kind of trying to get ourselves excited for something like that to happen. Of course, he ended up falling to the 3rd round to Tennessee, and the Seahawks used 4 draft selections without taking Malik Willis. Now, for me, what I do not want is for this to become Brett Hundley 2.0. And if you know what I'm talking about, the Seahawks traded a 6th-round pick, I believe it was the Packers, for Brett Hundley, who then proceeded to play as many snaps as a Seahawk quarterback as I have. which is 0. So I know a 6th-round pick, you can kind of toss that around. So that's what I don't want. What you phrased it really well, and I really liked how you said if you're Malik Willis sitting there, thinking about where you should go, the Seahawks do make a ton of sense. I mean, you can learn behind Geno Smith. I think that's a good fit there for him. It's a quarterback-friendly system. You're not going to be out there exposed. So as far as selfishly, if you're Malik Willis, I think you'd probably hope that if you do get traded, the Seahawks are on that short list. On the Seahawks side of things, no. I just no. I think it's a fairly short conversation, worth a little bit of some back and forth. But yes, I think at the end of the day, unless you're talking about a 7th rounder, I think that might be my limit. A 7th rounder, 6th rounder, if we find another way to sweeten the deal. I don't know, throw in Derrick Henry or something. I don't know. Of course, that's not going to happen. But that's what I didn't want. I didn't want Brett Hundley 2.0, but I get from his side of things why that would be a fit. But the Seahawks clearly weren't interested in him before, so I don't see them. I don't see that happening now. When we come back, we're going to talk about Derick Hall, one of the Seahawks' actual draft picks from a year ago. We'll break him down. We'll break out the edge rusher from Auburn and his fit in Seattle's plans moving forward. Don't go anywhere. You're listening to Locked On Seahawks. Looking for a delicious snack but don't want all the sugar and calories? Then you need the best tasting protein bar ever, Built. You got to try this. If you're like me and you want a healthier snack choice, you don't want to compromise taste, I've got the thing for you. Built Bars and Built Puffs. Built Bars are healthy and taste amazing. Seriously, they taste so amazing, you won't think that they're good for you. You got to try this. What makes Built Bars so good? Well, for starters, they're all covered in 100% real dark chocolate. That's right, real chocolate. And they come in unbelievable flavors like churro, my personal favorite, peanut butter brownie, and cookies and cream. I'm not sure how Built does it, but these bars taste like a candy bar while maintaining amazing macros. And what's even better is that they're healthy. Only 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar with a whopping 17 grams of protein. And now you don't need to wait to get a box. For years, we've been talking about ordering a Built Bars on Built.com, but now you can get them at your local Walmart or Sam's Club. While you can still get the specialty flavors still at Built.com. That's right. You can head to your nearest Walmart today, walk to the pharmacy section, and grab yourself a box of Built Bars. You can pick up a 4-box of cookies and cream, a double chocolate bar, or coconut puff. If you're close to a Sam's Club, run in and grab a 13-bar box with our hit flavors, brownie batter puff and churro puff. You can thank me later. Thanks for making Locked On Seahawks your first listen every day. Everydayers Corbin Smith and Rob Rang will be diving into Zach Charbonnet's fit in Seattle's offense and revisiting the team's backfield depth on our upcoming Monday episode. Make sure to listen to that as we continue breaking down the Seahawks' new draft class. Now, Dallas, for us here, it's time to talk about the first second-round pick that the Seahawks had, and that is Derick Hall, the edge rusher defensive end out of Auburn. And let's talk about where he fits in with this team. So obviously he came in. The Seahawks were mocked to plenty of edge rushers, plenty of defensive ends around the late first round, or maybe even if Will Anderson fell in the early first round, but that didn't happen. Now, as far as Derick Hall goes, physically, I kind of broke him down, looked at his combine numbers, his physical measurements, and it came down to I actually compared him. If you're looking at some of the, I think we can all agree the tiers of the edges right now for the Seahawks. Uchenna Nwosu is the alpha. He is the alpha of the edge rushers. And then I think Darrell Taylor's probably in that second tier. And then I think Boye Mafe and now Derick Hall are probably in that third tier right now. That could obviously change. But as far as physical traits, I actually found him more comparable to Uchenna Nwosu. Nwosu at 6'2", 251, and Hall at 6'3", 254. So very similar sizes there. So where do you see him fitting into this defense in year one and then going forward?
And immediately, Pete Carroll got a guy that's going to be elite with run defense. And he's kind of the edge rusher that during mock season, at least from what I've seen, Hall was one of the names that I most least saw for the Seahawks to draft. And the reason being is he doesn't fit the traditional Seahawks mold of their edge rushers. Typically, the edge rushers for Seattle, what they like to select is guys that exhibit the trait of bend. And Derick Hall, he is an explosive athlete, he does not have a lot of bend. And that was evident in his tape. Turning the corner was a struggle for him. But if you're talking about linear athleticism, straight line speed, burst off the ball, and violent hands, being able to put tackles on their butts, Derick Hall is the guy for you. 6.5 sacks, 11.5 tackles for loss, He played about 80% of snaps and was also the team captain. And being from the last 2 drafts, it's very evident how much of that is important for John Schneider to select. Just guys that are going to fit the locker room well. Very long arms, 34.5-inch arms. And again, speed to power. That's the name of the game with Derick Hall. And as you said, in terms of athleticism, he does compare to Nwosu. He has that alpha tier athleticism. If you can unlock the bend, and again, this is not something that where I'm saying he's not capable of doing. It's more of being able to get it to consistency. If he can consistently bend the corner along with his other physical traits, that's when you unlock a tier 1 edge rusher. And he has all those traits that you're looking for.
Right, and yeah, he has that speed rushing ability too. And I was looking at some of the, like I said, combine numbers, and among I know we don't really have Darrell Taylor's numbers because he went into his draft offseason injured, nursing an injury. But as far as among Uchenna Nwosu, Boye Mafe, and Derick Hall, Hall has the longest arms and the best broad jump. So there are some traits there for some explosiveness and some length that I think the Seahawks really like. And in fact, he might have some of those best traits among those 4 edge rushers. Like I said, I think we all can agree Uchenna Nwosu is the alpha dog in the edge room right now. But Derick Hall does have, I think he brings enough, to make a baseball reference. Uchenna Nwosu's got a lot of the good pitches, the fastball, the changeup, the curveball, and he's got a lot of that working for him. But, Derick Hall, he might just be one of those guys that has a really good fastball and a really good changeup. He might not have, the curveball, the screwball, whatever, however many pitches Shohei Ohtani has. But he has a couple pitches he does have. They're good. So, yeah, he doesn't quite have that repertoire quite yet, but that's something that can certainly be fixed with some coaching. But skill set wise, I agree that I think he's a bit comparing him to Darrell Taylor versus Boye Mafe. I think he's a bit more on the skill set side of Boye Mafe, more so than Darrell Taylor. Darrell Taylor's a bit broader and bigger, and Mafe actually was the better run defender in college, and we also learned that in his rookie year. And actually, Derick Hall was a pretty good run defender as far as Pro Football Focus goes. And he was not quite as polished as a pass rusher, but he is a better run defender. And I think the Seahawks, would be okay with that if he was a run first and pass rush, develop that later. I think the Seahawks would probably be okay with that because their run defense has been pretty poor to this point. So again, as far as fit goes, he definitely is inserted into the 2 deep at edge. I think it's, of course you have Nwosu and Mafe and Taylor, and I think Derick Hall should be right there. For me in camp, we're probably going to be looking at a lot of Boye Mafe versus Derick Hall. Who's going to take some of those snaps? Because I think Boye Mafe, and not that I don't think the Seahawks are going to cut Boye Mafe or anything, but I think that there's going to be a direct competition for snaps, for attention. And I think that's healthy. I think that's a healthy way to approach it. But overall, I do like this pick. I know there's some guys on the board, but overall, I think Derick Hall should be a good fit. What do you think? What do you see? What do you think is his ceiling as an edge defender for Seattle?
His ceiling as an edge defender to me is a Pro Bowl edge, and I don't think he's ever gonna get to that tier 1 Von Miller style edge rusher. But if you can get him to that Pro Bowl level, tier 2 of the league, tier 3, he has the physical traits of those guys in the top tier, except for the bend. And that's the only thing that's missing. But that is a crucial part that a lot of the tier 1 guys do have. But if Hall can unlock that, the potential with this guy is unlimited. Seeing what his coaches are saying about him, he is tougher than a $2 steak. He seems like a bulldog, just a guy. He's smaller than everyone, yet you see how many times there was a clip at the Senior Bowl where he held a tackle with one arm, and with using his other arm, he literally threw him, and the dude did a flip. That guy had about 100 pounds on him. Derick Hall is tougher than a $2 steak, and he's going to bring the run defense. And as you said, they need the run defense. If you can get a premier run defender from the edge with also a tier 2, tier 3 pass rusher, that's a win, especially for a second-round pick.
Yeah, especially when you consider what the Seahawks got in the first round. 2 of the top guys in their positions. I'm getting this vibe that everyone's. I agree that the hammer, the toughness, the edge, the angry elves. I've loved some of that stuff thrown around of this draft class, and I like that. I do. And what I also like about Derick Hall is, I mentioned this when we initially broke him down last week, was, we see those edge guys like, oh yeah, he's got all the NFL tools. He's got, if he just puts it all together, he's going to be a really, really good player. But you look at his college stats and it's like 1 year starter, 2 sacks, or, he's a first round pick. Like, oh, that's great. He's got all the physics. He's really raw. But he had 3 sacks and he played 9 games. Weird. But for Derick Hall, we're talking a 3 year starter. He had 15 and a half sacks total last 2 years with 24 tackles for loss. So talk about production. You got production with Derick Hall. So that's not an issue. And it's not he didn't exactly play, in the Big Sky Conference. He played in the SEC, Auburn, against NFL linemen. So it's not exactly, he had production against pretty much AAA NFL, which is what the SEC is, to make another baseball reference. So, I do like the fit. I'm really fascinated. He's going to be one I'm going to be watching in the camp against Boye Mafe, against Darrell Taylor, and even Geno Smith. I think those 4 are a pretty good core group of edge rushers moving forward. When we return for our third segment, we'll talk about the draft one more time as a whole. Dallas and I will dish out some superlatives to wrap out the 2023 draft class for the Seahawks. Thanks again for making Locked On Seahawks your first listen every day. Every day, as Corbin Smith and Rob Rang will be diving into the Zach Charbonnet's fit in Seattle's offense and revisiting the team's backfield depth on our upcoming Monday episode. Make sure to listen in as we continue to break down the draft class for the Seahawks. And let's talk one more time here on this Friday, Blue Friday episode here with myself, Nick Lee, and Dallas Cooper, filling in for Corbin, who's once again on his honeymoon, well-deserved with his lovely wife, belated honeymoon in Hawaii. So well-earned after some grueling nights working the draft, which he did a fantastic job covering. I subscribe to his tweets, and I always feel up to date and covered with Seahawks and elsewhere. Seahawks or Hard Rock and things like that when I subscribe to Corbin's tweets. But let's talk about NFL draft superlatives and specifically the 2023 Seahawks class. And now we talk about superlatives, in high school, like most likely to succeed, class clown, that kind of stuff. But we'll do more NFL draft and Seahawks draft specific ones. And we'll start with the 3-foot putt of those, the easy one, and that's best overall pick. So whatever your definition of best overall pick is, Dallas, who do you give that distinction to from this class?
Best overall pick for me was Jackson Smith-Njigba. And for me, the reason being, I straight up didn't expect him to be there at 20. I thought somebody else, these other wide receiver teams, would be kind of pulling the trigger early. I would have thought we had a wide receiver run a little earlier than that in the teens. Yet he fell to 20, and it's a perfect fit. You got Metcalf. He's going to play X receiver, deep shots all day with Geno Smith. Tyler Lockett, the smaller receiver, he also provides the downfield deep shots that you need. And Jackson Smith-Njigba, that was the one thing everyone was worried about. He doesn't have to worry about that when he comes to Seattle. He gets to do exactly what he's good at. Get open over the middle of the field and separate underneath. He's already going to be one of the better receivers in the NFL at that. And Seattle got a steal right there at number 20. That, to me, got to be the best overall pick.
Yeah, I was listening to some Seattle radio, and I think it was Mike Salk who said, he's always open. Like, you want to break down, this route, that route, these physical traits. He's just always open. And it's not, again, like he didn't play in the Pioneer League. He played in the Big Ten, and he found ways to be open. And that's something that's hard to teach, honestly. And he just has that innate, like Tyler Lockett. And he has that sixth sense, and he just knows how to get open. And I really, really like that about Jackson Smith-Njigba. I'm still working on that. My best overall pick is an easy one. It's kind of boring in this category, but it's Devin Witherspoon. When he came off the board, there was a little bit of like initial, no, Jalen Carter. Okay, that's I get it. But then I kind of started coping with that, and then like, what, this guy's a dog. This guy he's gonna bring. I know we all don't want to use the L word, the Legion of Boom. I know that's kind of off limits for now. But that vibe is coming back. The pass defense, the edginess to it, and then you got Tariq Woolen and Devin Witherspoon. I mean, man, and that's just tip of the iceberg with the secondary with these corners. I mean, don't forget about the Thorpe Award winner from a year ago, and Kobe Bryant is still in there. Julian Love. I mean, this is going to be fantastic cornerback room, defensive backs. Of course, you got Jamal Adams and Quandre Diggs as well. So I think just overall, you've added probably. I believe when they say that was the best player available at 5, I believe them. And I do. It's clearly they had issues taking Jalen Carter, and Devin Witherspoon was right there, and I think he's going to be a fantastic player. He brings that chip, that dog, that reckless abandon, but also in control to that secondary. I think is going to be a welcome sight. Let's move on to the next category, and that's best value pick. Now we all can have different definitions of value. A guy that fell that you didn't think would fall, or a guy in the later rounds, day 2 or 3, that you think could be a really good player, eventually a starter. So who did you have as your best value pick?
And Nick, I might have to steal this from you. I'm not sure if you chose this, but you've been talking about this position group all off season. So I have to do this since we're on the show together. Olu Oluwatimi, and him being in the 5th round. How did he fall? He went to Virginia after going to the Air Force and was the Remington Award finalist, was in the running for that. Then goes to Michigan last year and wins the award. Not only that, wins the Outland Award, which is not the best offensive lineman. It's the best lineman, offensive and defensive. I don't know how he fell that far. If you're talking about potential, he's got it. He's got the physical traits you want. If you're talking about experience, he's got that as well. You want off the field character, he's great at that as well. Oluwatimi, that has to be the best value pick. Center was a position that a lot of people were thinking that it's a position of need. You signed Evan Brown, but Oluwatimi brings long-term depth at that position. And who knows? This is going to be a fun camp battle to watch. I put out a tweet about this, and this is going to be very interesting. He might even compete this year for a starting spot right away.
Yeah, I think he is going to. I'm not saying he's going to start week 1, but Evan Brown, you better be looking over your shoulder there and working hard. And that's the best overall. Iron sharpens iron. Oluwatimi, I think he's a fantastic center. That's on me. I didn't. I feel like that Shaq meme. Like I have to apologize. I didn't know your game. The more I read about him and watched him, the more I loved him. 0 sacks allowed in pass protection last year, 82.5 run blocking grade. I mean, the guy's got it all. I think he's got the hardware to prove it. So yeah, that would probably be mine as well. But just for the sake of being different, because Oluwatimi's, I have really high hopes for him at center. But if I had to pick somebody else, Kenny McIntosh, how the heck did he go to the 7th round? And you could tell if you've listened to the audio of him being selected, he's pissed off, and I think that's a good thing that he went that long. He was probably, in fact, so mad he was in tears at where he had gone. So I think that's gonna bode well for him. He's gonna come in with a huge Mount Rainier sized chip on his shoulder into camp. And I'm not saying he's gonna be starting running back or even RB2 after Ken Walker and then overthrow Zach Charbonnet. But I think DJ Dallas better be watching out. I think he's going to come in and immediately compete for that 3rd down, third string, 3rd down kind of running back spot right off the bat. I think DJ Dallas has really got to look fast and work hard, because I'm not saying he's going to win it out right away, but I get that vibe that he's not going to go anywhere. And might I remind people, he went in the same round as a guy named Chris Carson. So it's not like that, you need to throw him away and dismiss him immediately because he was a 7th round running back. That's turned out to be a pretty good spot for the Seahawks in the past. Now let's talk next category, biggest surprise. So that could be player or development on draft day, draft weekend for you. What was the biggest surprise for the Seahawks?
And audience, I'm not saying that this surprise was a bad thing, but it did catch me off guard. Devon Witherspoon at 5. And when we did our dueling mock, Nick, I don't know if you remember this, but you remember how much heat I took for taking a cornerback at number 5. And yes, I didn't take Devon Witherspoon, but I didn't think that the Seahawks would take a cornerback at number 5. I was the last pick in that 1st round. But wow, Witherspoon at 5. Pete Carroll talked about it, and as you said, instincts with Devon Witherspoon. And Pete Carroll compared him to Troy Polamalu. People in the comments were saying, he's not a safety. What are you talking about? If anybody would know what a Troy Polamalu character would be, it would be Pete Carroll, the guy who recruited him out of high school. Pete Carroll would know what he's talking about when he comes to that comparison. And no, it had nothing to do with the position. It was all in terms of instincts. They both have that shot-taking mentality where they see something, they saw it on film, they're going to go get it and risk it. And 9 out of 10 times, they're correct. And Witherspoon, the huge play that's kind of been buzzing around is that swing pass that running back gets absolutely cracked on. And that wasn't the only play in it. That wasn't the only play. Multiple times Witherspoon is coming up behind the line of scrimmage for tackles for loss. How many times do you see a cornerback doing that? This is a dynamic player. He's not just a cover corner. This is a defensive weapon.
I like how, defensive weapon. I mean, if you watched Illinois football this year, if they had like an above average offense and like a quarterback play and all that stuff, I mean, we're talking a top 15 team with that defense they had. That defense was nails, and Devon Witherspoon was absolutely one of the spearheads of that. My biggest surprise was no quarterback at all. For the second year in a row, they essentially stuck their noses up at the quarterback class after, from 5 on. I understand. I'm pretty confident that if Anthony Richardson had fallen past the Colts at 4, that the Seahawks would have taken him. It sounds like kind of read between the lines a little bit there. Some of the comments that John Schneider and Pete Carroll have made. But after that, I mean, it's not like it was completely devoid. No Will Levis, no Hendon Hooker, no Stetson Bennett, Jaron Hall, Jake Haener, nothing. No quarterback whatsoever. And so you're starting 2023 Groundhog Day, same way you started 2022 with Geno Smith and Drew Lock, which, that worked out okay last year. Geno Smith, I think we all can agree, surprised us a lot, and I think earned himself on that role. And, no Malik Willis either. I know he kind of ruffled some feathers there, but no quarterback in this draft. I would have thought at least, take a flyer on somebody. I know they did with the kid from East, I think it was East Carolina, from blanking on his name, Ehlers, as an undrafted, and we'll see if he's got it. Maybe he's just a camp body, but no draft pick on a quarterback was a little bit surprising to me. Now, another topic here, another category. And I know we all both kind of assume Witherspoon and Smith and Jibba are probably going to be starters, or at least in that rotation week 1, barring injury. Let's talk about who is most likely to start week 1 among the non-first rounders.
This to me is Cameron Young, and very simple. Look at the nose tackles on the roster. There's not much bodies in there to begin with. Monet's probably going to start the year off on injury, and that's a tough injury to come back from. Young is going to be asked to play a lot of snaps. I would not be surprised if right away he's the starting nose tackle along with Draymond Jones on the line and Jaron Reed. Really wouldn't be surprised if that's the starting lineup for week 1.
Yeah, and I actually tend to agree. I'm gonna be boring here in this one, and I'm gonna throw in for Cameron Young too. I think part of it's out of necessity, but he's got that size and sneaky athleticism. I do like some of the things I've seen. I mean, the 4th round, talk about maybe getting your day 1 starting nose tackle. I mean, that's some value there too. He actually was a strong contender for me for the best value pick. And it's not as sexy, nose tackle and center and all that stuff, but that's what gets us going, and that's what wins championships. So let's talk about biggest boom or bust potential. Now that's guys that if they reach their ceiling, we're talking perennial Pro Bowler, star, or they could completely whiff and hardly sniff the field at all. Kind of a wild card. Who is that for you?
To me, that's Derick Hall, and I don't think Derick Hall is going to be in the sense of boom or bust. He's going to be a guy that falls out the league. But in terms of a high 2nd round pick, the potential boom with him is, as you said, perennial Pro Bowler. We just talked about it. Has every physical tool except for the bend that you're looking for in a tier 1 edge rusher. Yet that's important in what you're looking for. If that doesn't come around, he might not even pass Boya Mafe on the depth chart. And that's scary to think about, being that he is a high 2nd round draft pick. You would like him to compete right away for quality snaps. But again, Nwosu, Taylor, Mafe, and Hall, don't forget, you also got Tyreek Smith from last year. Alton Robinson still here. There's a lot of edges on the roster, and he's going to have to bring his A game in camp in order to overtake any of those guys on the depth chart.
Yeah, with some of the traits he has, he definitely screams boomer bust for me. Like he has, like I said, like in baseball, two really good pitches. But if guys start figuring it out and kind of, that's harder to adjust than if you have a bigger repertoire. And he doesn't quite have that. My biggest boomer bust is Zach Charbonnet, running back. And not that I don't think he can be a fine running back, but it feels like it's either got to be Ken Walker and Charbonnet are one of the an absolutely lethal 1-2 punch at running back. I think that there's those vibes there. I think that they're there. Or the Seahawks fans will be shouting into the heavens of why they wasted their 52nd pick on a running back when guys like John Michael Schmitz, Osiris Torrance, Drew Sanders, Hendon Hooker, Zach Harrison were all still on the board, and they took a running back. I could see those two schools of thought happening. I would like to think it the former is what happens, that he does become kind of the Robin to Ken Walker's Batman, or maybe there's two Batmans, whatever they started saying in Philly this year, a fat man or slim Batman, fast Batman, whatever it is, with the running back room. Let's finish off here, Dallas, with kind of a sour note. Biggest whiff. Now that might be a guy that you didn't like that they drafted, or a guy that you saw on the board you really wanted them to take and they opted to pass on. However you see this as the biggest whiff of the Seahawks draft in 2023.
Biggest whiff for me is Zach Harrison. And reason being is, going into the draft, we knew that the interior defensive line was a position of need, and there was need to be multiple picks. Now, in the 5th, they ended up selecting a guy by the name Mike Morris, an edge out of Michigan. And again, he played edge. They're converting him to 3 technique, and that's what Clint Hurt said on the phone call when they drafted him. Although Zach Harrison in the 3rd round, before they traded for the Broncos, and again, that was an excellent trade. They absolutely got great value compared to what the Broncos got in that trade. But if Zach Harrison was still on the board, I would be hard-pressed to think that John Schneider wouldn't have been intrigued to stay there and select him. Zach Harrison is pretty much a carbon copy of Mike Morris, except he has much more athleticism. And in terms of building a defensive lineman, Zach Harrison, in terms of positional versatility, is probably the perfect built in a lab made prospect you could ask for. 6'5", around 275, 280, 35-inch arms. Now, we thought 34.5 was a lot. 35. Harrison, to me, was one of those guys where you draft him as an edge and you immediately kick him inside to 3 tech, and I wouldn't have been surprised to have him see him have an elite year.
Yeah, I mean, you make some great point. I think Zach Harrison, I mocked him a few times at the Seahawks. It made a lot of sense. For me, it's not necessarily a guy that they passed on necessarily. It's just that they waited till day 3 to address their biggest needs, in my opinion. Oluwatimi, I'll hand up. That's a great pick. I'm not going to fault him for that. You could have had you could have had any of Joe Tippmann or Tippmann and John Michael Schmitz. Oluwatimi, he's obviously the most decorated of the 3, so it's hard to argue that. But defensive tackle, passed on guys like Keanu Benton. Keon White was out there still when you're in the top of the 2nd round. Now, Derick Hall, like we mentioned, is a risk. He's got some production, he's got some traits, but limited repertoire. So you take him in the 2nd round when guys like that, Joe Tippmann, Cody Mauch, Benton, White are still on the board. You didn't necessarily, from inside the edges, 5 tech on in, whether it be offensive tackle, guard, center, or interior defensive lineman. They didn't really address that till day 3, I think, was the biggest one. And not that, again, Oluwatimi or those guys can't become great players, but just they didn't get that infusion of talent early on that I thought they would. Now I could be eating crow. I think, again, Oluwatimi, I think, is a fantastic pick. That's probably my favorite pick of this whole draft. But there was definitely guys on the board still at early in the 2nd round, and even when I took Charbonnet, where I wish they would have more addressed the interior of the trenches. But you can follow me on Twitter at NickLee51. Follow Dallas at Dallas C. Cooper. Thank you so much for joining us today on this Blue Friday. Subscribe or follow Locked On Seahawks for free on YouTube, wherever you listen to podcasts, for the latest episode as soon as it's available. And of course, as I mentioned, look for Corbin and Rob Rang to talk about the running back room and Zach Charbonnet, and more specifically on Monday when we return. Again, celebrate Cinco de Mayo responsibly. Have yourself a wonderful Blue Friday. Go Hawks.